Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we're going to be breaking down the 2025 edition of the Farmers Insurance Open. Now, if someone were to ask me, hey, what makes this different from all the other golf shows out there? It's that this is a comprehensive all-in-one preview. We're going to tell you everything you need to know about the Farmers Insurance Open, about the host course, about what types of skill sets excel here, about what makes this a unique stop on the PGA Tour, and about what golfers you can expect to play well or not play well here. And we're going to do all of that in 30 minutes or less, and hopefully it is going to help you with your DFS lineups, with your bets this week, and with your one-and-done selections. You know, we did the same thing last week for the American Express. DFS last week for me personally was not all that great. I had a lot of starter scrubs lineups, and a lot of guys from near the top of the board like Tony Finau and Wyndham Clark missed the cut. But I did make it all back. I did have an each-way bet on Justin Lauer that I was able to cash that kind of won it all back for me. So, hoping to have a more successful week this week here at the Farmers. But like I said, we put ourselves on that 30-minute countdown, right? So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. If you have not already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That we can be with us for the rest of PGA Tour season, as well as all of our college basketball content that's coming your way as well. And if this video helps you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton. All right, let's go ahead and dive in and let's start talking Torrey. One thing that I would be remiss to mention is that we are in the middle of course rotation season. What I mean by that is this is the second of 3 consecutive tournaments on the PGA Tour. They're going to be played at multiple courses for one tournament. This one, they both just so happen to be called Torrey Pines. The Torrey Pines South course is the one that you are familiar with. It is the one that has hosted the U.S. Open. It is the one that is quite famous. And the Torrey Pines North course is the other host course of this event. What's going to happen is on Thursday and Friday, every single golfer in the field will play one round at the South course and one round at the North course, which creates a huge edge in showdown DFS or underdog drafts or player props, whatever, because they're not the same. The South course is pretty darn difficult. Like I said, it's the one that's hosted the U.S. Open, right? The North course looks very similar to the South course. The layout is very similar to the South course, except for the fact that it's about 500 yards shorter. So basically, it's like playing the South course again, but from a tee box up, or maybe even 2 tee boxes up. So if you're playing showdown DFS, or if you're looking at like individual round stuff, just play guys or bet guys that are on the North course. Don't even bother with the South course. No matter what the discrepancy in the skill level is, like the North course is pretty much always going to play easier. Just take my word on that and just target guys who are on the North course. Now, over the weekend, everybody will be playing that South course for 2 rounds. And I got to say, this is not like my favorite track on the PGA Tour. Like from like a bird's eye view, like when everything's zoomed out, like it's a beautiful piece of property, like the views of the ocean, kind of the vistas and like the cliffs and the hills. It's gorgeous. But as a golf course, it's not all that interesting. It's just got a lot of really straight, long par fours that have a little bit of bunkering, a little bit of trees, and a little bit of elevation changes, but there's not a whole lot going on. There's not a whole lot of famous holes. There is the 3rd, which is the downhill par 3. There's the 13th, which is the up and down par 5 that you might recognize. And then there's the 18th, the risk and reward par 5. But like for a course that's hosted 2 major championships and hosts a yearly tournament, you really want to have more than 3 holes that are like identifiable, memorable holes, right? And this one, they just kind of all blend together because they're all the same. So what that does is that actually creates a very homogeneous skill set. This course is going to play about or a little more than 7,700 yards. And so that homogeneous skill set is going to be drive it as far as you can off the tee and have a long iron into the green more often than not. And these greens are quite small. And so the green regulation percentage is going to be pretty low. So you are going to be looking for guys who are going to be able to scramble. The last few weeks at the Sony Open and the American Express, we were not prioritizing around the green play or scrambling at all, because if you were having to scramble, you were behind the 8 ball. You were just not going to win the tournament if you were having to scramble at either of those 2 venues. This is a course where around the green play is going to matter. And really, I think off the tee play is going to be the defining skill set this week. When you look at the guys who have won here in the past, the guys who have a lot of success here, it's a lot of guys who are elite off the tee players. Think John Rahm, think Tony Finau, think Patrick Reed. Like these are just guys that are really good with their driver and really, really like that's their skill set. That's how they separate. And they're also really good with their long irons as well. So really, this week is one that is going to emphasize the ball striking play and around the green play and de-emphasize putting. We are also in our first tournament this year that is going on POA greens, which is quite troublesome. POA is very difficult to put on. I don't have any personal experience putting on POA. It's very much a unique West Coast grass. But basically, what you see this every year at Torrey Pines and Pebble Beach and Riviera, the courses that are POA, is you see a number of short putts get missed because POA can be very bumpy. It can just, there's little subtleties that can throw your ball offline and just create havoc with short putts. And so, what it really is doing is it's like disadvantaging good putters because they're going to miss short putts too. The bad putters who are going to be missing those short putts anyway are going to be fine because they're missing them anyway, right? So really, this is a course where you can really go team no putt. You can really target guys who are poor putters at the golf ball because that weakness is not going to be emphasized. Now, on the scorecards, there are 4 par 5s here at this course. Really, you can go after them if you have an accurate drive that is in the fairway. But if you're in the rough, like the rough here is pretty penal. You're not going to be able to go for the par 5s. You're going to really struggle to hit the greens if you're going to be in the rough. But because there is 4 par 5s, because it is a par 72, I do think that par 5 scoring is going to play a little bit of a factor this week. And then the par 3s themselves are super long. There are 4 of them. And what that's going to do is that's just going to place a further emphasis on long iron play. Driving of the golf ball and long iron play is what is going to rule the day here this week at Torrey Pines. I say all this, and the North course is totally different from the South course, but over the weekend, everybody's got to play 2 rounds on the South course. So that is what we are emphasizing here this week. So for our key stats this week here at Torrey Pines, we are going to be looking at strokes gained off the tee, as well as driving distance and total driving. Basically, what I want to see is, are you better than your peers off the tee? Are you longer than them? Are you hitting more fairways than them? Are you putting yourself in better spots than your peers? That is what I want, because if you are able to be long and hit fairways here at this course, that is going to put you in the most advantageous spot possible, because you're going to have a ton of long irons into these greens. And so if you're able to hit long irons from the fairway, that is a huge advantage. So obviously we're going to be looking at strokes gained approach. We look at that every single week. That is the most correlated stat to winning on the PGA Tour. I'm also going to be looking at proximity buckets that are more than 150 yards, just because, like I said, you are going to have a lot of long irons here this week. And I'm going to also be heavily looking at guys who have course history here. This is a fairly predictive course year in and year out. My comp courses this week, the primary 2 are Riviera and Vedanta Vallarta. Riviera is very similar agronomy, also in Southern California, which is actually not going to be hosting the Genesis Invitational this year. Sadly, Riviera is a fantastic golf course. And then Vedanta Vallarta is the home of the Mexico Open. Tony Finau won that event. Jon Rahm has won that event. And both those guys have had a ton of success at Torrey Pines, particularly Jon Rahm. And that's just another course that it's quite easier than this one, but it's quite driver heavy off the tee, quite long iron intensive for the second shot. I also want to look at major championship venues, just Augusta National, US Open courses, PGA Championship courses, because basically this setup is kind of similar to that. It's so super long, and all major championships now tend to be super long. And you're going to have a ton of long irons, and long iron play and around the green play also is going to be something that really pays dividends at majors. And so I'm going to be looking at that as well. And then I'm also adding Olympia Fields to the list this year. Olympia Fields won the BMW Championship in 2020 and 2023. That's another long iron intensive golf course where Jon Rahm had quite a lot of success at, and he is the king of Torrey Pines. All right, so with all that being said, that is our course breakdown. Let's go ahead and dive into the data on the rabbit hole. All right, so if you have been with us for a while, or if you have not, when I refer to the rabbit hole, I'm not referring to an actual rabbit hole in the ground. I'm talking about the rabbit hole, which is a tool from BetSperts Golf that is a just excellent data site that has all kinds of filters and conditions that you can use to really kind of isolate the micro skills that you want to target in a golfer, and really kind of just, get into the roots of what you want at a specific tournament and create a custom model as well. And so that's what we've done here. We're going to talk about some of the key stats that I like this week and that we can use for the rabbit hole, as well as who came out on top of that model. So we're just looking at strokes gained off the tee first off. And so the best players in the field, just in general, strokes gained off the tee in the last 9 months have been Jonathan Vegas, Patrick Fishburne, Rico Hoey, Luke Clanton, and Alex Smalley. If you flip that to approach in the last 9 months, the top 5 in the field: Tony Finau, Aaron Rai, JJ Spawn, Doug Gim, and Hideki Matsuyama. Like I said, talking about the course, I think just general ball striking this week is going to be important, and those 2 stats emphasize that. Now, we also want to look at the long proximities. So, the proximity from 150 to 200, best in the field in that range are Mac Meisner, Kurt Kitayama, Aaron Rai, Joel Damon, Victor Perez. From 200 yards plus, which is really those long irons that are going to be used quite a bit this week. Luke Clanton, Carl Yuan, Sammy Valimaki, Chandler Phillips, and Jake Knapp as your top 5. Now, when it comes to around the green stats, the one that I chose this week was around the green proximity, because basically what's going to happen this week is you're going to be if you just look at putting, but only on POA grass, who are the best putters in the field on POA? The best is Taylor Montgomery, followed by Maverick McNeely, Matthew Pavone, Max Homa, and Hayden Springer as the top 5. Now, I also want to kind of get a little bit more into the weeds off the tee, because I do think the distance is going to matter this week, as well as hitting fairways. So basically, when it comes to distance, who are the longest golfers in this field? Charles Reeder, I have no idea who that is. Aldrich Potgieter, who I believe is a newly earned professional. Nicholas Norgard, who I believe is freshly moving over from the DP World Tour. Now we get to some familiar names: Alejandro Tosti, number 4, and Taylor Pendrith, number 5. I also want to look at total driving as well. So total driving is a metric that not only measures distance, but accuracy. This week, what's interesting, I didn't really want to look at any like distance of edge of fairway stats or just driving accuracy stats though, because basically this week, the way Torrey Pines works, if you're going to miss the fairway by a yard, you might as well miss it by 65 yards, because it's just rough out there. Like there's no real other hazards, right? So really, there's no real dichotomy between like a small miss and a big miss. So really that's what I'm wanting to really emphasize this week, is guys who are long and accurate, as opposed to, just accurate, because if you're just accurate, eventually you're going to miss some fairways as well. So who are the best total drivers in the field? Luke Clanton, Ludwig Oberg, Chris Corte, I have no idea who that is, Max McGreevy, and Danny Willett are your top 5. Now, if you want to just look at long golf courses, because this is one, who are the best players in the field on long golf courses? And this honestly, like the top of this just sounds like it would be like my DFS lineup. Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Hideki Matsuyama, Sungjae Im, Thomas Dietrich is the top 5. Rounding out the top 10, Jonathan Vegas, Shane Lowry, Egan Bradley, Ludwig Oberg, and Max Homa. Now, I also want to look at approach on long golf courses, because that's another way where you can really emphasize long iron play. And you see a lot of the usual customers from the last list up near the top of this one: Tony Finau, Will Zalatoris, Hideki Matsuyama, Gary Woodland, and Keegan Bradley as the top 5. And then when you load all the comp courses up, including Torrey Pines in there, all the major championship venues that hosted a U.S. Open or PGA Championship, Riviera, all the ones that we mentioned on the key stats slide, the top 5 in comp courses are Will Torres, Hideki Matsuyama, Tony Finau, Shane Lowry, and Max Homa. Now, when you throw all that into a model, my number 1 golfer this week is, no shocker, Ludwig Oberg. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think this is like one of the, if you were to design a course for Ludwig in a lab, I think this would be one of those courses. He is not only one of the longest drivers of the golf ball in the field, but he is one of the most accurate drivers of the golf ball in the field as well. We mentioned last year how literally his driving distance was more than Rory McIlroy. His driving accuracy was more than Colin Morikawa. That's an absolutely insane combination, and he's going to get to wield that driver. When he played at Pebble Beach last year, he also showed a lot of upside for putting on POA. He ranks 25th in this field in strokes gained putting on POA, and he's played long courses. He's played major championships well in his career. So I think this just really lines up well for Ludwig Oberg. I think this could be a huge win for him on the PGA Tour. His one win so far has been at the RSM Classic, which is like the complete opposite of this course. It's short, in the southeastern United States. But that's another skill set that Ludwig got to use, is he's also a great wedge player. So I think as Ludwig's career goes on, he's still super young. We're going to like him at courses that are really short or really long, not necessarily the in-between. I think he's a great wedge player and a great long iron player. I don't think he's necessarily a great middle iron player at this point in his career. So Ludwig Oberg, the number 1 player in my model, makes a lot of sense this week. Hideki Matsuyama was number 2 in my model, and he checks a lot of the boxes we're looking for. I just really struggle with Hideki sometimes because he tends to have random form. Like, you just never really know what you're going to get from Hideki, and he already won this season at the Century, which is a very different course than what we're going to get here. But he's a great around the green player. He's a good putter on POA. He's been good at major championships in his career, so it makes sense that he's number 2 in my model. He's just one of the hardest players to evaluate for me when you look at, just general golfers over the course of a season. It's really hard to predict what courses Hideki is going to play well at or not. Sung J M is number 3, and he's a guy that people give the rap for being his best at short course Birdie Fest because he won the Shriners a while back and he plays well at some of them. But I actually think Sung Jae's pretty good at long and difficult golf courses, as evidenced by where he came in this model. However, one thing I will say with Sung Jae, though, I didn't really take recent form into account big time with the model because not a lot of golfers have played a lot of rounds so far this season. But you look at the one round he played at the Stadium course of the American Express, he lost almost 6 strokes on approach. Even at the Century, he was very neutral on approach. I am probably not going to be playing Sung Jae this week because of the fact that I just don't trust where his approach game is right now. Even though when you look at his long-term form, when you look at his course fit, it does rate out really, really well. 4th in my model is Doug Ghim. This was a little bit of a surprise to me, but Doug Ghim, what we know about him in his career, he is a great approach player. He is a great long iron player as well. He's a very bad putter traditionally, but he can putt real well on POA. He's not super long off the tee, but he is pretty darn accurate, and he has played well at long golf courses in his career. So I really do like the idea of playing Doug Ghim at $7,700 in DFS. I don't know if I will get there on an outright bet, but when you look at what he's done so far this season, he made the cut at Sony, nothing really to write home about there, but played really well at the American Express and gave a lot of strokes back on the green. So the fact that he is a better putter on POA, I do think this is a pretty good spot for Doug Ghim. The fact that he shows up there on that high on my model is a little bit of a surprise, but definitely a guy I think you can get in DFS lineups. Definitely a guy that I think you can make a top 20 bet for. Tony Finau is number 5 in my model. I thought he might come out number 1, but turns out he wasn't a great driver of the golf ball last year. That's really what's bringing him down, but he's an elite approach player, elite long iron player, elite Torrey Pines player. And just that really lines up. The king of course history here at Torrey Pines when you just look at golfers that are in this field. The only problem is I don't know if Finau is 100% healthy. He did just miss the cut at the American Express. And in that missed cut, he was not good off the tee at the Stadium course, but he was good on approach, was not good with the putter at all. T15 at the Century where he was not all that great except with the putter. So really, I don't know if he is 100% healthy coming off of this injury. If he is, I think this lines up perfectly for him. If you don't trust his health, then I think that will be a very easy reason to fade him this week. 6th in my model is Joseph Bramlett. He's like the DFS value play that showed up here at the top of this model, but it absolutely makes sense when you look at it. He is a great driver of the golf ball. He is a great long iron player as well. When you look at his overall statistical profile, he tends to do well with long irons and with long golf courses. And he has not played here this year. But when you look at his past history here at the Farmers, the last 2 years, T13, T25. So definitely like the fact that he's got good history here. I think he is a DFS value play that you can look to. I think he might be worth a long shot bet. I wonder if he does have the upside to win this golf tournament, but he definitely is a guy that you can be getting into your DFS lineups at that $6,900 price tag. Aaron Rai came in 7th. Not really a big shocker there, just elite approach player, especially with long irons. Siwoo Kim 8. Austin Eckroat 9, Will Zalatoris 10. So I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm betting Will Zalatoris to win this tournament outright. I think it is time for Will Zalatoris. The last 2 years he's been recovering from this injury, right? Has never really been back to the old Will Zalatoris. I think he might be already. At the Century, just a meh T26, right? But at the American Express, T12, that is not an event that I think shapes up really well for him at all. I full faded him in DFS last week, and he was great. He gained almost a stroke per round off the tee, gained about half a stroke per round on approach, was really good around the green, gained 3/4 of a stroke per round, gave back half a stroke with the putter. but that's okay. That's what Will Zalatoris does. This is a course that's going to de-emphasize that. This is a guy who has played really well at major championships in his career. He's played really well at this golf course in his career. Last year, he was 13th here and second at the Genesis right after. Both of those tournaments, he gained over 2 strokes putting for the tournament. And he had a runner-up here. He lost to Luke List in a playoff 3 years ago. So I do think that this is a great spot for Will Zalatoris. I'm going to be all over him this week. I was very ecstatic to see him pop up in the top 10 of my model. All right, now that is all for the model for today. I do want to tell you though, I update and kind of tinker with this model all week long. So if you do want to know who makes the top 10 in my final model, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/MikesMoneyPicks. I tweet out the full top 10 for my model as well as my DFS core plays every single week in a full article, full write-up on there if you would like access to that. And that's going to be coming out a day early this week because this tournament starts on Wednesday, not Thursday. So you're definitely going to want to get a hold of that. And that is going to be where you can get access to that. Also, I'm in the Fantasy Corner Discord. The link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. The Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a lot of really good, really smart people who talk DFS for all kinds of different sports, and golf is one of them. If you're looking for more people to bounce ideas off of or just, sweat it out together, the Fantasy Corner Discord is the place for you. All right, let's take a quick breather and then let's take a look at the board and see if we can identify some more guys that we might want to play in DFS or bet this week. All right, so taking a look at the board, I've kind of already gotten to this, but I think my favorite play at the top of the board in DFS, like of all the favorites of all the big dogs, is going to be Ludwig Åberg. Just what he gives you off the tee, he's basically like starting on second base ahead of a lot of these guys with how good he is with the driver. He's not quite Ryan Day, who is starting on third base according to Jim Harbaugh, but Ludwig Åberg is starting on second base with what he does with the driver. He is going to be my favorite play at the top. I'm going to be much heavier on Ludwig Åberg than every single other guy near the top of the board. I'm also going to be pretty heavy on Will Zalatoris in the second tier. I've already mentioned my affinity for him. That's just kind of how I'm approaching it for DFS this week, is I'm really going to anchor around those two guys. Mix it up a little bit with some of the other guys near the top, but other than that, really kind of try to throw a lot of darts lower on the board and see if I can find some other guys that might stick. So the other guy in the 9K range that we didn't get to talk about with the custom model, but I do think is a great fit for this course, is Shane Lowry. So Shane Lowry, great major championship performer in his career, great off the tee player, long driver of the golf ball, pretty accurate driver of the golf ball as well. Generally a pretty good long course guy, generally a pretty good around the green guy, generally a pretty poor putter. And this course is going to accentuate his weaknesses and accentuate his strengths and minimize his weaknesses. Last year he played this tournament was T25. It's not bad. I think this is a really good spot for Shane Lowry sitting there at $9,000. I also think that the next little tier of the upper 8K range on DraftKings, Taylor Pendrith, Kurt Kitty, and Max Homa, I think they all make for great top 20 and top 10 bets. I struggle to see any of them winning this tournament, which sounds weird to say, but I think they're all great fits for the course. When you look at all three of these guys, Pendrith, Kitayama, Homa, Pendrith and Homa in particular, really long off the tee. Kitayama is not super long, but he has played long courses in his career really well. That is like the driving feature of these three golfers, is they've played long courses well. Recent form for all three of them leaves a little bit to be desired, but course history for all three of them, pretty good for two of them. Pendrith has a 9th and a 16th year. Homa has a win here and was T13 in his defense last year. Kurt Kitayama's missed the cut in his only 2 appearances. So those three guys, I'm definitely going to be playing a ton of in DFS. And like I said, I think they all make great top 10, top 20 placement bets as well, just because I think they're outstanding course fits. Now, heading further down the board, a guy that I am going to talk about next is Beau Hossler. So Beau Hossler, when you think about the weakness of his game is like the big miss off the tee, right? He's a pretty good driver of the golf ball, but every now and then it can get really, really wild. Well, here's the thing. This week, you don't have to worry about getting really, really wild because there's no difference in missing the fairway by 1 yard and missing it by 61 yards. At the American Express last week, he was great off the tee, was really poor on approach. I believe he put a few balls into the water on the stadium course. That's why that number is like kind of artificially lower than it should be. But he was his usual shelf, great around the green player, great putter. So I do think that this is an interesting spot for Beau Hossler. I think that this is a place where it kind of can emphasize his strengths and it's a pretty good spot for him at $8,000 on DraftKings. Another guy that I love this week is Thomas Dietrich at 7,900. So like you just look at what he did last year at long golf courses and it just, it speaks for itself, right? Like you don't really need a whole lot more information than that. Like literally just looking down the board at long courses, T14 at the US Open, T41 at the Memorial, T4 at the PGA Championship at Valhalla, T2 at the Houston Open Memorial Park. That's actually another decent comp for this one. Tony Finau has won at that golf course. And last year he was T20 at this event, but I feel like he was in the final pairing or like the second to the final pairing. He's also a great POA putter. So this is a really, really good spot for Tony Finau, or not Tony Finau, Thomas Dietrich. Some would say he's like the Belgian Tony Finau because he is long off the tee. He does never seem to close out tournaments. So maybe that wasn't the worst Freudian slip there. But I think this is a really good spot for Thomas Dietrich, 7,900. He's going to be in a lot of my DFS lineups. I think he makes a good outright bet. I would kind of prefer to play him in the each way market. That way, if he does choke away a golf tournament, you're not super punished for it. But I think he's a great, great spot for this tournament, 7,900. Doug Gim and Austin Eckroat showed near the top of my model, so I'm really going to get into them. I think they're in great spots. One guy that I will be fading this week is Eric Cole. So Eric Cole, his weakness of his game is his driver. And this is a course that is going to place an emphasis on the driver. And he's not particularly long off the tee. He's not particularly accurate off the tee. And he's not a particularly great long iron player. He's much better with his wedges at shorter courses. So I'm probably just going to be fading him here this week. The good news is if you're playing DFS, I don't think anybody's going to be playing him. So there is the whole, that I say all the time on here. Sometimes a bad play becomes a good play in DFS when nobody plays him. And he would be a guy that nobody's going to be playing in DFS. So he might be like a low owned guy at 7,400 that you could play, but I would just prefer to avoid him and play him at a course that's a better fit. So another guy that I do want to talk about is Taylor Moore. So very quietly, very, very good last week at the American Express. Gained strokes in every single category. Now, remember, that is only measured on the stadium course. But thing is, you got to also remember with Taylor Moore is he has a win in his career at the Valspar Copperhead course, which is a long golf course. He was very good at the PGA Championship last year, another long golf course. T2 at the Memorial Park last year, which is another long golf course. And then last year he made the cut, but was only T70. Very uncharacteristically poor on the greens. He is normally a good putter. So just that track record of, long golf course success, I think that's a pretty good spot for Taylor Moore. And he's going to be a guy that I'm going to be getting into my DFS lineups as well. Another guy that I got to mention, he feels like a misprice on DraftKings, Matthew Pavone, who is only the defending champion of this event, who is only one of the best POA putters in the field. He proved it last year when he played Pebble Beach right after this event and was outstanding on the greens. The only downside is that, his recent form is almost non-existent, but and he hasn't been playing well on the European Tour either. But you look at last year, he was great at the Masters. He was great at the US Open, T12 and T5 respectively. Won this event last year. Great putter on POA. I kind of like Matthew Pavone here in this spot. And I feel like he's a misprice on DraftKings. I feel like he's way too cheap at 7,200. I think he's you don't see guys repeat tournaments all the time, but I think in terms of an outright bet, I think you could do much worse than Matthew Pavone. I think his odds are very reasonable. I believe I saw him about 150 to 1. So I think Matthew Pavone, very sneaky misprice in my opinion, given what he's done in this type of course and especially at this course last year. Kevin Yu is another guy that sneaky good at long courses. So I'm willing to go back to him for that reason. He did win in the swing season at the Sanderson Farms Championship. Sometimes you see these young guys come to the PGA Tour. They just need one win to break through to kind of show their stuff and see what they got. Last year at this tournament, he was T6. He also played well at Mexico 2 years ago. Not last year. So he does have a track record of long courses. I think that Kevin Yu at $7,100 on DraftKings is a great play. I think that you could get a pretty good number on him at a top 20 or top 40, something like that. Now, lower than $7,000 on DraftKings, we've talked about a few of the guys already that we're looking for, but I think you could just generally look at driving distance and course history and find some guys here. We've already mentioned how much we like Joseph Bramlett, how much he popped in my model. And then you've also got guys like Eric Van Rooyen, who's pretty long off the tee. Course history is virtually non-existent, but he's another guy that's pretty good at long golf courses. After him, Luke List has won this event. Sam Ryder almost won this event 2 years ago. He's not long off the tee, but he does have 3 top 10s here, which is pretty substantial. I'm sorry, 2 top 10s here, not 3. So I do think this is a pretty good spot for both Luke List and Sam Ryder based off of their course history. Lower than that, Jake Knapp won at Mexico. That's another long golf course. He was T3 here last year. I'm going to talk about old Nate Lashley, though. So my best DFS week ever was the 2021 Pebble Beach Pro-Am, which was won by Daniel Berger. I had both Berger and Jordan Spieth in my lineup, as well as a very young Akshay Bhatia, as well as Nate Lashley, who played really well. Nate Lashley is a guy that you want to play on POA. He's a really good putter on POA. He's also really good at long golf courses. So I think that this is a pretty good spot for Nate Lashley. Last year, he was T3 here. Did not gain strokes off the tee, but was great on approach, great around the green, and great with the putter. So Nate Lashley, I think, is going to be one of my favorite DFS value plays here this week. And I'm kind of add him to that short list that we've got developing so far. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead now and instead of talking about some DFS value plays, instead of talking about some bets, let's talk one and done really quickly. So this is not a signature event for one and done. So like you shouldn't really feel the need to like use your best golfer available. I would only use somebody this week if you're like certain there's not a better course fit for them down the road. I think you could make an argument this is a pretty darn good course fit for Ludwig, honestly. I think everything shapes up well for him this week. However, Pebble coming up next week, he was T2 there last year. So Pebble's a pretty good fit. I think Ludwig at a major championship is also a solid play. And I think he's just a young golfer on the rise. So you might not want to burn Ludwig this week, but at the same time, if he wins the tournament, you're going to want to have him. So I would certainly give Ludwig some consideration. I would certainly give Matsuyama some consideration as well. I mentioned kind of my lukewarmness on him, but in one and done, like, when else are you going to use Hideki? He's pretty good at Scottsdale. He won the FedEx St. Jude last year, but like, when else? Like, I don't want to play Hideki at a major. I don't really want to play Hideki at a signature event, if I'm being honest. So I think this is a pretty good spot for Hideki. Finau, I think you could honestly wait for him to get more healthy. Sungjae Im is probably going to have a week where he's going to be one of the favorites in like a jabroni field. So I probably wouldn't be eager to use Sungjae this week. I feel the same way about Keegan Bradley and Max Grazerman. I think the popular one and done play this week is going to be my guy, Will Zalatoris. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think Shane Lowry makes a lot of sense as well. So I'll be honest. I think I'm probably going to keep my one and done picks this week. In between the three of Max Homa, Shane Lowry, Will Zalatoris. It's going to be one of those three for me this week. I'm not going to be looking to burn Ludwig or Hideki or Finau here this early. All right, that's going to do it here for this episode. Y'all went a little bit over my 30-minute time limit, but I think if you don't include the intro and kind of my own self-promotion, I think I might have done it. So anyway, that was everything you need to know about the Farmers Insurance Open 2025. Hopefully gave you guys a whole lot of information to help you find some winners in DFS betting and one and done. If this video helped you out in any way, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. But other than that, that's all we got for this week, guys. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you can be with us for the rest of the PGA Tour season. And we are going to be back next week for the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, a tournament in a golf course that I like a lot more than this one. So I'm very much looking forward to that. That will be the first signature event of the PGA Tour season, which is always exciting, but definitely looking forward to that one. But hoping that we're able to pick some winners this late. Last week, we were close with the each way on Justin Lauer, hoping to, if not hit another each way, hit an outright winner this week. Like I said, I'm already looking at Will Zalatoris and probably going to add a few more to that list. But that's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Hopefully we're able to help you get out. Best of luck to you guys in your DFS betting and one and done this week at the Farmers Insurance Open. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and I will see you guys next time.